Okay, so I just watched episode 3 of Prehistoric Planet. I'm pretty sure the episode title was Freshwater. It was a really good episode, so we're just going to dive right into it. I was super glad to see the Velociraptors in the first scene because I've enjoyed what we've seen of the pterosaurs a lot. There's been a lot of pterosaurs, but I was honestly hoping for something else. I know I'd already seen that clip in the trailer, so I assumed that was going to be in this episode, the waterfall scene. But I was honestly hoping for something else, like I said, because we've seen so many pterosaurs, but we've still not even seen like my favorite group of pterosaurs that was alive during the late Cretaceous, which was the Asdarchids like Quetzalcoatlus and Hatzegopteryx. Um, so I was really glad to see the raptors, and especially since they were hunting the pterosaurs. But um, so I got this little Pteranodon and this Velociraptor to pretty much represent the two. And then, like I said about the last episode, or I said this in the video about the last episode. I love seeing the raptors portrayed accurately since you see them so many times in that classic Jurassic Park style. So I love seeing them, the feathered bird like velociraptors, and I loved how they portrayed them in this episode. It was so good. Like how they would use their wings and stuff, like not actually to fly, but help them landing and stuff. Super cool. Um, and also, I love how they made them so smart, using strategies to hunt, like the female getting on top of the rock and the two males went on the bottom. It was kind of interesting that that's how they chose to make the group. I personally think it would have made more sense if it was one male and two females. But if the two males were following the female, it makes sense, I guess. But that was interesting. And it was really cool how like the female made the calculated risk, to go down the cliff to get the pterosaur, because an animal taking that far of a drop could easily break a bone. But since it had its wings, which it can't actually fly, but it could use them to help the landing. It was a calculated risk, which ended up paying off since it got to escape and made off with food, while the two males were kind of in a situation. So, like I said, I really like the raptor scene. Uh, and then I love how they put the battle scars on the old male Rex. You don't see a ton of documentaries showing off like dinosaurs with like fights or like battle scars from like previous fights. But it would happen a ton, especially in older top predators that would get into conflicts a lot with prey themselves and other predators like fighting over territory and stuff. So it was cool. And really, the only time you ever see dinosaurs with a ton of battle marks on them are like stuff like this, the Jurassic Park figures where they put those like gashes in them all the time. So it was cool to see that. And I love how they made the T Rex go in the water to clean out its scar. Um, that was interesting though, because I mean, it would take a very smart animal to know to do that. Because just having a big wound in you and knowing to go in river water, which river water would be way more cleaner than like pond water, because pond water can get like stagnant, but like river water where it's constantly flowing is usually cleaner. It would take a really smart animal to know to do that. Uh, and T Rex, if any dinosaur would know to do it, a Rex would make sense. I mean, I don't. Rex probably wouldn't be the smartest dinosaur. Raptors probably would be. But dinosaurs like T Rex would be very smart because they've got a very large brain size. So it makes sense that a older male Rex, that's been in a lot of fights, would know to clean clean its wounds so they don't get infected. Because infection would kill probably a ton of dinosaurs like that. So that was really cool and smart to see the T Rex doing that. But it was, like I said, a little interesting just because it would take a very smart animal to know to do that. But T Rex, could have the stuff to do it, especially an older, wiser one. And once again, I'd like to say though, I love how they made the T Rex portrayed. It looks amazing and exactly what the current belief of how T Rex would look. And I love how they portrayed its behavior, just like a big top predator would be today. The T Rexes and the Tarbosaurs both remind me a lot of current day big cats. And that makes a lot of sense. Both are pretty smart, good sized top predators in their environment. So it makes sense that they would behave similar to an extent. And I was very glad with how they portrayed the interaction between the two Tyrannosaurs. It makes sense that they would have been very cautious at first, because even if they knew they were of the opposite sex, it makes a lot of sense, though, that, they would be very careful, because it could be very dangerous, to go too fast interacting with another Tyrannosaur. But it makes a lot of sense, though, that the male would be, thinking way more about potentially mating than trying to get into a fight. Now, if it was two males, it probably would have been a lot different. But with it being a male and a female, it makes a lot of sense that the male would be try not to be confrontational. So I was really glad how they portrayed them. And then I was super excited to see Deinocheirus, one of my personal favorite dinosaurs. I don't have a figure of Deinocheirus. I got a Therizinosaur figure. This isn't Therizinosaurus itself, but it's a Therizinosaur. And I know Deinocheirus is not a Therizinosaur, but a bunch of people think it is, and it's not one. It's more closely related to like Gallimimus, Struthiomimus, and Ornithomimus, but it's still a theropod that would primarily eat plants and probably was omnivorous to an extent. So that's why I got a Therizinosaur figure, because it was probably the closest thing that I had to one. Because I don't think I have a Gallimimus figure either, at least not a good one. So I got that figure instead. And I was super excited to see Deinocheirus, like I said, and I love how they portrayed it. They made it portrayed as like a big weird duck, and that's probably what it would have acted like. A giant duck that had claws instead of wings is pretty much what we currently think Deinocheirus would have been like. So it was cool to see it actually portrayed like that. And it makes a ton of sense that it would have. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes, so I'm making sure I don't miss anything. It makes a ton of sense that it would have had to deal with insects bothering it, just like many modern day animals do. Because a lot of animals will like roll in the mud or dust just to get like flies off them. So it makes a lot of sense that dinosaurs would have had the same problems. So then moving on to the Quetzalcoatlus, was really cool. I don't have a ton to say about this one though, but I am really glad they put Quetzal in here, because it is, like I said, one of my favorite pterosaurs, because I love the giant Asdarchids. But I don't have a ton to say, because it was really accurate, and it's pretty much what you'd think. They did everything you would really think. The mother would guard the eggs as well as she could, and any other Quetzals would try to, get rid of any competition to help their own offspring's chances. And, it also got itself a meal and got rid of some competition, so it makes a ton of sense that the other Quetzal would do it. But the fight was really cool. I mean, you'd think they wouldn't fight a ton, though, because, the beak that they use as the weapon could very easily, hit their eye. So you wouldn't think that they would try to fight each other very much. So confrontation, I would assume, would be very rare between Quetzals. But the situation that the fight occurred in makes sense that they would have been confrontational. And we didn't see the eggs hatch. This was one thing that I thought was interesting, though. We didn't see the eggs hatch in the episode, but it said the youngs would fend for themselves when they hatch, kind of like the pterosaurs in the first episode. But it's interesting that the pterosaurs would, go through so much measure to protect the eggs, and then pretty much just be fine with whatever once they hatch. But once they hatch, they'll pretty much do whatever. And if they can fly as soon as they hatch, I guess it doesn't really make a ton of sense for a larger pterosaur to try to guard them from anything. But, it is kind of surprising that an animal would go so hard to defend its young for so long and then just be fine with whatever once they do hatch. And then I did really like the Masiakasaurus. I don't have one, or Masiakasaurus. I don't think I'm pronouncing it correctly, but I got the Ceratosaurus figure out because I know they're closely related to Ceratosaurs. They're I think the descendant of Ceratosaurs. They're really closely related to a Bellysaurus, but I don't believe they're actually in a Bellysaur. So it was really cool to see them in there. And it was really cool seeing them hunt down the crabs, because, for a while we've known that they were fish eaters, so it makes a lot of sense that they would also eat stuff like crabs and other shellfish, crustacean type stuff. And then the Beazle Bluefo eating the baby Masiakasaurus was kind of sad, though, considering we have seen many young creature deaths compared to any other deaths, like the baby Rex, or I don't think it was really a baby, more like a juvenile, the one that gets eaten by the mosasaur in the first episode, and the baby pterosaurs that just get eaten by the other pterosaurs and other stuff. And we've just seen a ton of the young die, but it makes sense because in nature, the young, weak, and sick, anything that is easy for a predator to eat, it's gonna eat. Going into this though, I was really glad to see marine reptile in the episode because marine reptiles would have ventured into fresh water on occasion, like dolphins do today. But I was really glad and surprised they used Elasmosaurus instead of I thought they were just going to use Tyrannosaurus again. They ended up actually using Elasmosaurus, which was cool because I thought they might just copy it again. And I'll be honest, whenever I remembered seeing the clip of the Elasmosaurus going up to catch the fish, but I thought it was the Tyrannosaurus from the first episode, and I kept going back in that first episode, and I was like, where in the world is the scene of them jumping up and catching the fish? And then I realized it was actually the Elasmosaurus in the third episode and not the Tyrannosaurus in the first episode. So I wasted a little bit of time trying to hunt down that clip in the first episode to find out that it's actually not in the first episode. But like I was saying, I was really glad to see them in the freshwater because it's just very similar to what we think dolphins would do. And in a lot of these episodes, it seems like they are really trying to portray plesiosaurs is like dolphins, and that makes a lot of sense. Smart, intelligent marine reptiles that probably would have hunted in groups. Makes sense that they would behave very similar to dolphins. And I wish there's a couple things that I wish they would have actually done in this episode. Like, I wish that they would have said where the scene was that we saw Elasmosaurus, and they might have, and I just missed it, but there was that really interesting looking sauropod, and we didn't know what species it was, and they might have said the location, like I said, but I just missed it. Or it would have also just been awesome if they would have just came out straight and said, like, this is whatever, something sauropod. But they didn't. But, I mean, I'm going to guess that sauropod appears in the next episode just because it was a really cool looking sauropod. So it would be awesome. Or no, it probably won't appear in the Ice Worlds episode. I'm really excited for that next episode, I will say, though. But it would be really cool to see it in one of the further next episodes because it was a really cool looking sauropod. And I was really glad to see... or no, that's a different note. Oh no. Let me go back. Okay, here I was. The fish catching scene though was awesome. I love how we've seen out of the plesiosaurs. Like I said, they act a lot like dolphins. That was really cool. Like, I've loved the fish catching scene. I love the scene in the first episode of the Tyrannosaurus pushing away the mosasaur on the first episode to protect the pregnant female. And there's a couple of things that I think would have been really cool if they would have incorporated in this episode. It would have been really cool if they'd had a mosasaur venture into fresh water and catch some swimming dinosaur crossing like a river. But I did really love the episode and all the species that were in it. But I wish they would have had also one of the giant crocodilians like Deinocheirus. But Deinocheirus actually might have been extinct this late into the Cretaceous. But it might not have been. I'm not 100% sure on that. But... it would have been really cool if we could have had one of those giant crocodilians, or just any crocodilian in general, like just, a regular sized one, like the ones the size of the modern day crocodilians. But considering it was a freshwater episode, I was really hoping that we might have got, one of those freshwater crocodilians, but, we didn't. But it was still cool with what they did. And like I said, though, there was some things I wish that they would have incorporated into the episode, but I did really like what was in it. And honestly, if I could have changed anything in any way on the episode, I would have made it about 20 minutes longer and featured a crocodilian like Deinocheirus. But Deinocheirus might have been extinct, like I said earlier. But if it wasn't extinct, then I definitely would have done Deinocheirus or just some other crocodilians just to feature in there because, we're very aware that freshwater crocodilians were alive during this time period. So it would have been cool to have had some of them in the episode. And I also would have included that mosasaur clip I mentioned earlier. if it was up to me, the episodes would have been about 20. That would have been about an hour long instead of 40 minutes. And maybe maybe we'll get another season of Prehistoric Planet. That would be awesome. I don't know how likely that is, but that would be super cool if we could get a second season of it. And considering how popular it's been, maybe we will get a second season. That would be awesome. And now I'm going to go into my MVP portion. And if you haven't watched any of my videos so far that I've been going over the episodes, I give an MVP I give an MVP to one creature. Sometimes more than one. But my favorite creature as far as the scenes in the episode. And going into this episode, I thought Deinocheirus was easily going to get the MVP because I was pretty sure the Freshwater episode was going to be the one that featured Deinocheirus. But it ended up not being that easy for me for a couple reasons. I really love how they portrayed Velociraptor and T-Rex in this episode. So that was one of the things that kind of hurt Deinocheirus' chances for me in the episode. But also, the other thing that hurt Deinocheirus was Apple TV's YouTube, actually, which might be surprising. Because they kind of did some little teaser clips, like 1-minute segments of some of the episodes. And they did the Deinocheirus clip for the Freshwater episode. But you pretty much got the idea of the whole Deinocheirus scene, which was kind of unfortunate. Because then there wasn't a ton to really learn about the Deinocheirus or watch about the Deinocheirus in the episode. Because it would have been really cool, if they had it try to catch a fish or something, or defend itself from a predator. But it was still really cool. But the MVP for this episode actually is a 3-way tie for me. Velociraptor, T-Rex, and Deinocheirus. Velociraptor gets it in this episode because I like the Velociraptor scenes more in this episode than the last episode. Though I did enjoy the scenes of the Velociraptor that was in the last episode. T-Rex once again, because I love how it acted in this episode. I gave it a tie MVP with Mosasaurus in the first episode, but I think I preferred the T-Rex in this episode more, actually. And wow, T-Rex, or not T-Rex, but a Tyrannosaur has won MVP all 3 episodes for me. And I know there are more episodes in this featuring a Tyrannosaur, Deinocheirus, and the one chasing the Oviraptors in the first episode. That one might not be a Tyrannosaur, though, but it looks a lot like one. And then Deinocheirus gets it. Deinocheirus was great, but like I said earlier, the only thing that hurt Deinocheirus for me was that that Deinocheirus, we pretty much got the whole idea of what it was going to be like in the episode due to the clip on their Apple TV's YouTube. And I have decided, though, I'm going to do I already pretty much decided for a while, though, that after the series, I'm going to have just one whole video just talking about the series as a whole. But I've decided that I'm going to have, give an MVP award to the whole series. And right now, Tyrannosaur is looking pretty good, or T-Rex is looking pretty good to get the whole series MVP. And now I'm going to go over the figures featured. So if you haven't seen my series, I go over all the figures that are presented in this video, so, and you might be confused with the figures selected, but I'll go over why each of them are in this clip, and what I do in this is go over the brands of each of the figures in it, so if anybody's looking for these figures specifically, they can find them. So first we've got this Jurassic Park 3 T-Rex. The Jurassic Park stuff you can find pretty easily on eBay. I don't know about this figure specifically, but like I said, the reason why I chose this one is because T-Rex was in the episode and the battle damage on it. And then we did the Ceratosaurus for the Masiakasaurus. This is a Safari Limited older Ceratosaurus. And this is a Therizinosaur relative. I used it for Deinocheirus, but it's obviously not Deinocheirus. This is a Pterobibitat one. I don't know what the exact species is of this, though. It's on the, I still have the box for that one, though, but I don't remember what the species is for that one. And then I've got this Tylosaurus. I think this is Tylosaurus. It might be Mosasaurus, actually, but no, it is Tylosaurus, but I use this for my Mosasaur example of what I would have liked, like how the Elasmosaurs were in the water. It would have been cool if the Mosasaur, came up and grabbed a dinosaur swimming. And then I had Deinosuchus because, like I said, it would have been really cool if we could have got something like Deinosuchus in the episode. And that's the Safari Limited Carnegie Collection. And this Tylosaurus is the Geo World, I think, Jurassic Hunters one. And then this Elasmosaurus is the Safari Limited. One of the Safari Limited tubes. I think it's like the Prehistoric Seas or Prehistoric Oceans or Prehistoric something water something. And that's where you get it out of. And this is the Skletch or Schleich Mini Quetzalcoatlus. Then this is the Groovy Tube Books Pteranodon that came in the Dynamite game tube book. And then here's the Safari Limited Velociraptor. I think this came in the Carnivorous Dinosaurs tube, but it might have just came in the regular Dinos tube. But overall, like I said, really enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed this episode, and the documentary is still going amazing and awesome. Honestly, just wish they would have made the episodes closer to an hour, like I mentioned earlier. But, you know, maybe we'll get a second season or something. But I'm really enjoying Prehistoric Planet. I still have 2 episodes left, but I've really enjoyed what I've seen so far. So, thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned, and we will have the next 2 episodes pretty soon.